I have acquired the never before publicly available footage of the altercation that led up to the 2022 murder of Anthony Santi. This is one of those cases that always stuck with me as a great injustice. It's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night. So I was looking into it again recently and read that the police and the prosecutors had used surveillance footage from the gas station to determine that they wouldn't prosecute the woman who shot and killed him. So I wanted to see the surveillance footage for myself, but it wasn't actually available anywhere. So I sent an email to the Missouri police asking for it. They told me if I sent a $70 check to the office, I would be able to see it. I did that, and here we are. I have the footage. Now, before we get into it, let me recap the case for people who maybe are unaware or don't remember. On October 6, 2022, Anthony Santi, a 41-year-old off-duty firefighter, was at a gas station in Independence, Missouri, when 23-year-old Javon Taylor got agitated with the cashier because they didn't have the kind of cigars Javon wanted. He began threatening, acting aggressively towards the cashier, who was a young girl. So Anthony Santi stepped in and told the guy to, knock it off and beat it. At which point, according to court records, Javon Taylor began threatening Anthony Santi. So Santi chases him out of the store, at which point Javon Taylor goes to his car and gets his gun. Anthony Santi wrestled the gun out of his hands and put him in a headlock on the ground, at which point Javon Taylor's girlfriend, who has never been named, picked up the gun and shot Anthony Santi in the back, killing him. The couple then fled the scene to her mother's house in Kansas City, as you do when you're acting in self-defense. But the mother brought her daughter back to the gas station, at which point the police arrested her. But ultimately, she was released without any charges whatsoever. Javon Taylor, on the other hand, was charged with felony possession of a gun. He was on probation at the time for aggravated robbery, and so was not legally allowed to possess the Glock that was used to kill Anthony Santi. He is currently serving 7 years in prison without parole on that firearms charge. One thing that strikes me about this case is the similarity with what happened between Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely on that subway in New York City, when Jordan Neely was threatening people on the train and Daniel Penny choked him out. Daniel Penny was charged with murder and manslaughter, but acquitted on all charges by a jury of his peers who decided he did nothing wrong, defending the people from the violent, threatening schizophrenic freak. And Daniel Penny is widely regarded as a hero, including by me personally. These are the kinds of guys you want in your society, the kind of guys who will actually step up and take charge in a dangerous situation. But imagine if when Daniel Penny was choking out Jordan Neely, a black woman shot him in the head, killing him. And then the police and prosecutors decided that that black woman did nothing wrong and let her walk. That's basically what happened to Anthony Santi. So I'm going to play the footage now, but just keep that in the back of your mind as you watch. Now, I was really hoping there would be audio included in the footage. Unfortunately, there's no audio, but you can see Javon Taylor here at the counter. And notice now he is taking an aggressive stance, pointing at the cashier. You can barely see. I'll zoom in a bit here. Now, if you have a PhD in negolatry, you don't even need the audio. I guarantee you he's looping at this point, saying the same kind of thing over and over again, aggressively. And there comes Anthony Santi, who chases him out of the store. And then we have the outside footage where Javon immediately goes to his car and gets the gun. Look how quickly this happens and how Santi immediately is put into a life or death struggle. Total fear for his life, thinking he's about to get murdered by this emotional, low impulse control goon. And from here, we know what happens. He is executed by the girlfriend while he is defending himself. The prosecutor at the time was a woman named Jean Peters Baker, seen here giving a guest lecture at a law school. I'm not sure if her hair is dyed green in this photo or if it's just like the lighting doing that. But either way, she unilaterally decided that this was a clear-cut black and white case of self-defense on the part of Javon Taylor's girlfriend. There was no need to even send it over to a grand jury or anything like that. And so there was never any charges, never any trial. Jean Baker also received a lot of criticism for her decision to charge Eric DeValkenair, a white police officer who shot and killed a black man named Cameron Lamb in the course of a police investigation. DeValkenair was ultimately convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 6 years in prison, but had his sentence commuted by then Governor Mike Parson, who criticized Baker, saying that the prosecution was political and essentially implying that she was feeding into the anti-police sentiment of the time.
The one thing that bothered me more than anything about that case was the way the prosecutor handled that in Kansas City, by the accusation she was making about guilt or innocent without actually even knowing the facts herself. And it was at a time when there was a lot of civil unrest, and the problem is you don't ever want anybody convicted because of the political side of things. But she's did a poor example of setting the stage and making this more of a political issue when she should be doing what's right by the law.
Jean Baker is no longer the Jackson County prosecutor, and I have to admit that when I was pursuing this footage and thinking about putting this video together, I was thinking, it's a long shot, but maybe we could contact the new prosecutor and ask them to take another look at this case. They could decide, we should send this to a grand jury. We should see if there is an indictment to be had here, but I don't know how much luck we're going to have with the new prosecutor, Melissa Johnson, who is the first black woman ever elected to the office and who ran on a campaign of racial reconciliation, I guess you could call it. In one of her campaign videos, she was recorded saying, "Nobody's going to save us. And unfortunately, we have reached a point in our community where we are doing exactly what these white folks want us to do." She also referred to the George Floyd riots as purposeful and warranted rage. In response to criticisms over some of these statements, she said, "I've always been about unity, but what I'm not about is setting aside the history and the current experiences of black people who primarily bear the brunt of this issue so that we all can get along." And so this is the reality. This is the reality we live in as white men, where if we step up and do the right thing, we could be murdered with impunity, where the system will support the murderers. If we're lucky enough to not get killed, like Daniel Penny, they'll still try to put us in jail for our entire life with a lengthy and costly trial. And the funny thing is, my whole life I heard about how the criminal justice system is unfair to black people, how it disproportionately puts them in jail and they're constantly being falsely convicted for crimes they didn't commit. But when I look at what's actually happening, it seems to be the other way around. This is just a recurring pattern we see over and over again. They did the same thing to Ian Cranston, which is another case I've talked about. Chud the Builder, they won't let him bail out of jail. Shiloh Hendricks is about to go have a show trial for the crime of offending black people as a white woman. And I'm just over it. Anthony Santi wasn't just a fireman, he was a father. And while I was researching this video, I was looking at his obituary page and I came across a comment that just destroyed me, left by his daughter, who posted a photo of her with her dad and said, "I will always love and miss you, Dad. Nothing in this world could ever hurt more. I just wish I could talk to you one last time." Posted on November 22nd, 2024, 2 years after he was murdered.
That boy needs therapy. Granny Gazoo, let's have a chew. Now when I count three. That